Tonight, on First at 9 this Thursday, the 7th of August 2025. Market strategy. New 20% tariff on Sri Lankan goods imposed by the Trump administration takes effect today. Local exporters unveil strategic initiatives to strengthen Sri Lanka's footprint in the US market. End to conspiracies. President vows that government would not allow Sri Lanka to fall into another economic crisis. Further asserts that government remains vigilant against any political conspiracies attempting to sabotage the nation's path to progress. No confidence in defence. Opposition to submit no confidence motion against Deputy Defence Minister Aruna Jayasekara. Claims the portfolio could hinder investigations into the Deputy Minister's culpability in failing to prevent the Easter attacks. Reserves on the rise. Sri Lanka's official reserves climbed to $6.14 billion in July 2025.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana. I'm Tharindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. In your top story tonight, President Anura Dissanayake assures that the government will not allow Sri Lanka to fall into another economic crisis and that it will not allow conspiracies to destabilize the country politically. Addressing Parliament today, the head of state said Sri Lanka has not reached a final agreement with the United States regarding the tariff rate that would be levied on Sri Lankan goods and added that negotiations are underway to reduce the rate further from the current 20%. Many hoped that the country would collapse due to the conflicts that arose within the country and globally. Their biggest hope was that our economy would tumble due to the US tariff policy. Regardless of who it is, a few days ago the opposition predicted that the tariffs would climb back up to 44% from 30%. The opposition always have a dreadful dream to see our country's economy collapse. That dreadful dream will not become a reality.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙත් නෑ. දෙසැම්බර් ජනාධිපති කබීර් කොහොමද දෙසැම්බර් තව මාස 3යි. 24 කල් ගියාද? එක්සත් ජනපදයේ විසින් අපිට ඉදිරිපත් කළ සමහර යෝජනා තිබුණා.
There were several proposals presented by the US which we are currently discussing. So far we have not reached or signed a final agreement. We have started negotiations to possibly further reduce the 20% tariff. If you expect our economy to collapse due to the impact of the US tariffs, it is time to let go of that hope. Our GSP trade concession is due to conclude by the end of 2027. We are holding broad discussions to secure the GSP concession. We reached several agreements at these discussions, including the repealing of the Prevention of Terrorism Act, amending the Online Safety Bill, and the conducting of thorough investigations into murders and crimes that have been concealed. These are the government's responsibilities. We will gladly accept it if a third party points out these measures to us. However, even if they didn't, it is still our responsibility to uphold democracy and human rights within the country. We have already taken measures to diversify export markets as well as our export portfolio. Foreign direct investment received in the first half of 2024 amounts to 252 million rupees. Total foreign direct investment received in the first half of 2025 is 507 million rupees. That is a growth of 101%. We will have foreign reserves of over $7 billion by December this year. We opened the market to import vehicles after 5 years. LCs worth $1.268 billion had been opened as of yesterday. We expect LCs of around $1.5 to $1.8 billion to be opened by December. Rumors are circulating claiming that the importation of vehicles would be restricted or halted outright. What will happen then? An individual who is planning to purchase a vehicle next year will attempt to do so within this year. What is the reason for these rumors? It is an attempt to threaten our foreign reserves. So we would like to announce to all citizens that we will not be curbing the importation of vehicles. We will leave the market open for vehicle imports. You have been bringing up an issue related to containers. Do you believe Comrade Bimal Ratnayaka would steal containers? However, you brought up a valid allegation. A committee was appointed by the Ministry of Finance. The committee provided a report. I directed the report to the Criminal Investigation Department. Similar issues had arisen 13 times. You are focusing on the 13th occasion. Why? It is because if you focus on the 12th, you too would be implicated. For the first time in history, an income will be generated surpassing the 4.5 trillion estimated in the budget. The three main sources of government revenue have all surpassed their targets for the first time in Sri Lanka's history. So, the income required for the government to function can be generated. There is no issue with that. A certain MP questioned why the government does not allocate some funds for the Sevanagala sugar factory if we have that much of an income. The economy collapsed because they started to distribute houses with government funds. The government possesses 8 trillion rupees. I am grateful to the previous government which initiated that measure. We are the main purchasers of treasury bills and bonds. Therefore, yields cannot be artificially driven up as before. We are controlling the markets. We will halt the distortions. We have maintained interest rates at a single-digit level for over a year now. We are discussing with the banking sector measures that can be taken to expand credit rather than lending large sums to a few customers. As per the criteria used to determine the strength of an economy, I am happy to say that we have stabilized and strengthened the economy. So, if you believe that the country would collapse through an economic crisis, that will not happen. So, how would it happen? Through political instability? We've seen this happen before. Governments have been toppled inside this very parliament. They have been removed through people taking to the streets or through elections. But I assure you, this government will not be overthrown by any of those means. Remember that we will accept change only through a democratic election. Some individuals in this country believe that the arm of justice will never reach them. They think they can commit crimes and still maintain the facade of gentlemen as if they are untouchable. They act as though protected by some invisible shield because for too long no one has challenged them. But wait and see what will happen. Today, criminals know the law is closing in. They see their personal secretaries being questioned. They know where the trail ends. And that's when they begin spreading fears saying the government will fall or that they will cause its collapse. This is a tactic meant to intimidate law enforcement officials. We've seen this before. But I am proud to say that today we have given those officials the leadership, confidence and security they need to do their jobs. We missed a golden opportunity to punish these criminals back in 2015. Some of the lawyers who are now in the opposition, I remember you attending anti-corruption meetings and then later calling the very people under investigation to represent them in court. You were given the opportunity, but you didn't act. You even claimed Dr. Hans Vijay Surya was receiving money from India. When I asked him about it, he said that he didn't even care about the person who made those accusations. These are people who are earning millions, but they gave it all up to serve the country. We recently found a T-56 assault rifle in Colombo. During that investigation, we traced 80 hand grenades hidden inside a tank in Vaunia. There were plans to smuggle those explosives into Colombo. These are not accidents. These are conspiracies. And let me be clear, we will not allow any conspiracy to derail the genuine journey towards national development. The current laws are insufficient. We will introduce new legislation. Everyone has the right to speak freely and face the media. But if any official or parliamentarian is found to be part of a conspiracy to destabilize the country, we will take all necessary steps to defeat those efforts. There is even a conspiracy targeting the cardinal. A rumor is being spread that he didn't attend the ceremony on the day of the Easter attack because he had prior knowledge. I saw the Catholic Church convene a press conference to address this. I urge those spreading these harmful narratives to take full responsibility for their words. I also heard former MP Gammampila claim that the government arrested the former Navy commander based on information from an LTTE member. Let me be clear, he was arrested on a court order. Once again, I warn if anyone is even considering a conspiracy, we will not allow it to happen. Yes, work as separate political parties. Yes, compete for power. That is healthy. But do not engage in conspiracies. Do not create economic instability. Isn't that right, Harsha? If what you claimed had come true, US tariffs on Sri Lanka would now be at 44%.
ඔබතුමා අපි බයිට් එකට ගන්න බෑනේ ඔබතුමා ජනාධිපතිතුමානේ ඉතින් අපි ගෞරවය දීලා අහගෙන ඉන්නවා කමක් නැහැ හැබැයි අපි ඔබතුමා හම්බෙච්ච අවස්ථාවේදී අපි කළ යුතු දේ කුමක්ද කියන එක ඔබතුමාට පැහැදිලිවම ඉදිරිපත් කරා අපි කැමති ජනාධිපතිතුමා අපි කැමති වෙච්ච වැඩේට කැමති අපි මේ රටට ආදරේ
ඔබතුමා කීප විදියට අද වැටෙන්න ඕන රට මොකද අද ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන ටැක්ස් එකනේ අද වැටෙන්න ඕන රට එහෙම උනේ නෑනේ
The president's speech became the hot topic in Parliament today as it was met with significant criticism from the opposition. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa warned of a conspiracy to mislead the public with unrealistic promises of a prosperous future and insisted that the opposition will not participate in such conspiracies. In the meantime, SJB MP Dr. Harsha De Silva rejected claims that the president inherited a bankrupt country, arguing instead that it was a developing nation.
I think the president had a nightmare last night and came to Parliament today under a lot of pressure. It seemed like he was delivering a speech as if he were the opposition leader. I don't know if he's speaking based on rumours, but in his speech he revealed that a change will happen in the month of December. Then he said there will be changes before and after that as well. But change must happen through public belief. The president spoke about a conspiracy. However, there's one conspiracy that involves giving the public unrealistic hopes and expectations of creating a thriving nation, a beautiful life. That conspiracy is taking place with the support of a 2/3 majority in Parliament. Therefore, I would like to tell the government that the progressive opposition will not be a part of any political conspiracy, nor have we ever been party to such a conspiracy. And I would like to add that I have been requested to take on the premiership 61 times. The opposition leader says that the president, Comrade Anura Dissanayake, came to Parliament as if he had a nightmare. No, it was the opposition leader who was shaken by what the president said, because Sajith Premadasa knows he will never get close to the presidency in this lifetime. That's why he suddenly remembered that he was requested to assume the premiership 61 times. It was the 61 members of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya who asked him, though Dr. Harsha De Silva was not one of them. The president delivered a frightening speech today. He claimed that they took responsibility for a country that was completely bankrupt. He said economic growth was negative and that the treasury was empty. Those were massive lies. He took over a country that was developing, not bankrupt. Even though he says these things to mislead people who may not be fully informed, we are ready to debate with him with facts. Finally, I would like to say this to our president: before you question our ideology, you should reflect on your own. Our president is required to come to Parliament once a week. It seems like he tried to cram a lot of data into his speech. That was a speech filled with data intent to conceal the truth. Nevertheless, we must commend his attempt. He tried to claim that this country is on the right track. However, he forgot that he was speaking to the potential class of this society. Where are those people reflected in these facts? Who did you collect countless taxes from? It was from the improvement, it was from the impoverished, through one tax after another. The government has forgotten its promise about removing VAT on school supplies. We respect the government's narrative on pursuing a path of anti-corruption. I'm not saying corruption isn't happening, but the anti-corruption narrative must be followed by actual action. Because if you only talk about anti-corruption, how can a country truly move forward? The president previously made a speech about education in which he said that some people run from individuals and then they try to replace those same individuals. He said that kind of people are useless. Now the reason why he has to come to Parliament is because the people who helped him with small tasks are now trying to do useless things. Even though he is making an attempt, he knows that he cannot do his job properly because of some useless people. That is why he made a 2-hour-long speech.
The new 20% tariff imposed against Sri Lanka under US President Donald Trump's tariff regime takes effect today. While local industries brace for impact, the Export Development Board claims the government intends to leverage current circumstances to expand Sri Lanka's market share within the United States.
On April 2nd, US President Donald Trump imposed reciprocal tariffs against nearly 100 countries, with Sri Lanka also being threatened with 44% tariff. Following international request, a 90-day grace period was granted to allow countries to negotiate new trade agreements. Subsequently, Sri Lanka engaged in multiple rounds of discussions with US officials to seek a tariff reduction. The bilateral negotiations culminating in the reduction of the tariff rate from 44% to 30%. Anticipating a further reduction in the tariff rate, Sri Lankan authorities continue to negotiate pertinent matters with US officials. Consequent to those discussions, the tariff sought to be imposed against Sri Lanka was slashed to 20% from 30%. Discussing the US tariffs with exporters yesterday, Treasury Secretary Dr. Harshana Suryaperuma expressed the government's intention of securing more benefits for Sri Lankan exporters.
The objective that we chased, we were very clear, very focused as to what we need. It is to secure the competitive advantage we needed as a country. So we were very focused on that. The most important stakeholders in this conversation is you. What we can do to safeguard your interest as exporters. After seeing that presentation with a lot of facts, the next word that we need to talk about is opportunity. How are we going to capitalize on this opportunity that is ahead of us? And we are continuing to engage with the teams or with our counterparts. It's a journey. It's not a single destination. It's a journey. So we believe with the input of y'all, we should be able to get the best outcome for the country to elevate the society from where we are to the next level. When I see some of those numbers, we should be able to get more dollars into the country.
ADB Chairman Mangala Vijayasinghe meanwhile pointed out a silver lining as Sri Lanka prepares to face the consequences of 20% US tariff. 25% of Sri Lankan exports are bound for the US. However, looking at this matter from US perspective, our exports correspond to only 0.7% of the US imports. We don't even make up 1% of US imports. 65% of our apparel exports are bound for the US. With the slashing of tariffs to 20%, we hope to expand Sri Lankan market share within the US.
ඇමරිකා ජනපදයේ වෙළඳපොළ තුල ලංකාවේ තියෙන ෂෙයාර් එක තවදුරටත් වැඩි දියුණු කරගන්නමින් ඒ පංගුව වැඩි දියුණු කරගන්න.
In the meantime, US President Donald Trump imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods, citing New Delhi's continued imports of Russian oil in a move that sharply escalated tensions between the two nations after trade talks reached a deadlock. With the new 25% tariff imposed as a penalty, the US tariff rate on Indian imports has been increased to 50%. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi commented on the US punitive tariffs. The welfare of our farmers is important to us. India will never compromise the well-being of its farmers, dairy farmers and fishermen. I know that I will have to pay a huge price personally, but I'm ready for it. India is ready for it today. As tensions simmer between India and the US, President Donald Trump were asked whether he would impose punitive tariffs on China, which also buys Russian oil.
Or do you have any similar plans to enact more tariffs on China?
Could happen. Could happen. Depends on how we do. Could happen. It may happen. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you yet. We did it with India. We're doing it probably with a couple of others. One of them could be China.
Samagi Janabalawege MP Mujibur Rahman announced that the opposition will submit a no-confidence motion against Deputy Minister of Defence Aruna Jayasekara to the Speaker on Monday. The SJB emphasises that since the Deputy Minister served as the Army's commanding officer for the Eastern Province during the time of the Easter attacks, his current ministerial portfolio could hinder ongoing investigations into the incident.
No one has claimed that Deputy Minister Aruna Jayasekara was involved. We have no evidence to suggest such a connection. However, he is a witness. His subordinates were received prior knowledge via one of their informants about the murders of police officers in Vaunathu. We do not know whether this information was relayed to the then commanding officer, now Deputy Minister Aruna Jayasekara, but he will be able to clarify that. So far, no cases have been filed naming any individuals as the mastermind behind the attack. The charges brought have been for failing to act on prior intelligence. This situation is no different. Military intelligence officers cannot deny that they had prior knowledge of these events. He must be investigated. His statement must be scrutinized and his subordinates must be questioned. It is clear to all of us that his current position poses an obstacle to the investigation. To ensure an impartial and effective inquiry, the Deputy Minister should step down. Since he has not done so, we as the joint opposition decided to bring a no-confidence motion against him. We will submit the motion to the Speaker next Monday.
A school health survey conducted last year has found that 18% of Sri Lankan school children suffer from depression. Speaking at a recent news briefing, Acting Director of the Directorate of Mental Health, Dr. Lakmini Magadaratna noted that 75% of them lack support to address their mental health concerns. We are seeing an increase in depression and stress due to the economic issues and unemployment that arose with the COVID-19 pandemic. How can we identify depression? It is a state of sadness that lasts throughout the day and persists for weeks. Patients lose their enthusiasm and interest in their jobs. They may also feel physically weak. These individuals tend to view everything negatively. Some sleep too much while others lose sleep. They lose their appetite and sometimes they get angry. These are the types of symptoms we see in adults. However, it is hard to identify depression in children because they are not sad all the time. However, their education may take a sudden turn for the worse. These children tend to spend more and more time on their mobile phones. Most of the time, these symptoms are not identified in the first place. And even if they are identified, there is a reluctance to consult a doctor. Depression can be cured easily if treatment is sought early rather than waiting until the condition worsens.
In 2024, there was a school health survey. 22.4% of children reported suffering from loneliness. 11.9% of children said they find it difficult to sleep because they are sad or stressed about something. 18% of children said they are suffering from depression. 7.5% of children revealed that they do not have close friends. This is a very saddening situation. Only 25% of children said they have someone to listen to what's troubling them, while the remaining 75% do not have that privilege. If you notice one of your friends or your family members exhibiting these symptoms or observe a difference in their behavior, medical advice must be sought. Otherwise, they must visit a qualified clinical psychiatrist.
The Director General of Sri Lanka Customs agreed before the Court of Appeal today to release, subject to certain conditions, 991 vehicles of the BYD brand that are currently detained by Customs. This agreement was expressed after considering a petition filed by John Keel's CG Auto, the authorized distributor for BYD vehicles in Sri Lanka, against the detention of the relevant vehicles and seeking their release. The conditions include that nearly 3.6 billion rupees, calculated as the difference between the taxes owed for the relevant vehicles, should be submitted as a guarantee in a state bank, and the petitioning company should agree to pay the interest applicable to that guarantee. The petitioner should also cooperate with the investigations being carried out by Sri Lanka Customs regarding these vehicles. A committee comprising 2 technical experts from the universities of Peradeniya and Moratuwa, an expert from the Government Analysts Department and an expert officer from the Department of Motor Traffic should be appointed to conclude whether the motor capacity of the relevant vehicles was 100 or 150 kilowatts. Welcome back. The Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka imposed administrative penalties totaling 6.5 million rupees on 3 institutions for violations of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act No. 6 of 2006 during the first half of 2025. Penalties were levied for failing to comply with statutory requirements, including reporting obligations, customer due diligence, sanctions list screening and transaction monitoring. The collected penalties were credited to the consolidated fund. Accordingly, the National Savings Bank was fined 3.5 million rupees for failing to report large transactions, maintain updated UN sanctions lists and comply with account suspension orders. Bally's Limited was fined 1.5 million rupees for insufficient customer due diligence, lack of sanctions screening, poor record keeping and inadequate transaction monitoring. Bellagio Limited was fined 1.5 million rupees for similar lapses in anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism compliance procedures. While no direct business relationships with sanctioned individuals or entities were identified during inspections, the FIU emphasized the importance of robust compliance systems and timely reporting to mitigate money laundering and terrorism financing risks. Sri Lanka's official reserve assets have increased by 1% at the end of July to $6.14 billion. However, this figure includes proceeds from the swap arrangement with the People's Bank of China, which are subject to conditionalities of usability. According to data from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, reserve assets were at $6.08 billion at the end of June 2025. The Colombo Bourse closed on a mixed note today. The benchmark all-share price index climbed 0.11% to settle at 19,628.57 points. The more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 declined by 0.04% to end at 5,825.39 points. Market turnover crossed 3.2 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 108 million rupees. And with that, here's a look at the day's foreign exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.